Namaste. My name is Vivekanand. You can call me Vivek. Welcome to a series of HOAs where I study and review some of my favorite books. Today, I study and review the book Start with Why, written by Simon Sinek. The book is full of golden nuggets and so cannot be covered all at once. So I am splitting it into two parts. This is part 1 of the two-part presentation. But first let me take under a minute to tell you about myself. I believe in living a simple life. I believe in thinking differently. I am proud to share my belief with Steve Jobs and Leonardo da Vinci, who said, "Simplicity is the ultimate in sophistication." Here's my simple way. Avoid the cowboys, work with the Indian. Let the Indian handle technology, and you live an integrated, simple life. Maybe you have lots of projects and you are struggling to find someone who can integrate and simplify. You can reach me by email at videobook@wake-technology.com, and you can see this video live at wake-technology.com/videobook. There will be 3 elements in each episode of this Hangout on Air series. Presentation, which you are seeing now, live discussion, which would soon follow, engagement. I shall engage in conversation with the audience who put comments on the event page or on YouTube. Now, before I proceed further, let me answer the question, why am I doing this? As you may already know, integrate, simplify life is my tagline. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness is a well-known phrase in the United States of America Declaration of Independence. But these days, we seem to forget, or worse, ignore the very first item there, life. With study and review of works by inspirational people, I hope to inspire those who visit my website to integrate, simplify life. In a talk at TED, Simon Sinek presents a simple and powerful model for how great leaders inspire action. His talk attracted over 23 million views. He wrote the book after that. He says, those who truly lead are able to create a following of people who act not because they were swayed, but because they were inspired. Together, let us study this book with the help of a mind map. He introduces his book by answering the question, why he wrote the book. He says, this book is about a naturally occurring pattern, a way of thinking, acting, and communicating that gives some leaders the ability to inspire those around them. He wrote it as a guide to focus on and amplify the things that do work. A guide to enable us to ask the right questions. He wrote the book hoping to inspire people to do the things that inspire them. The goal of his book is not to give us a course of action. Instead, it is to guide us to discover the cause of action. Among the many examples he gives in the book, 3 particularly stand out. He says, when Samuel Pierpont Langley set out to invent powered flight, he was better equipped, better funded, and had a better educated group, but did not succeed. Whereas Wilbur and Orville Wright had none of those resources, but inspired the enthusiasm and commitment of a dedicated team to achieve first powered flight and change mankind. Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak started out to put a dent in the universe, and they managed to do it. Similarly, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. had his complexities. He was not even a charismatic speaker, but he delivered words immortalized by history and led a civil rights movement that changed America forever. He immortalized the words, "I have a dream." They all started with why. All the inspiring leaders and companies, regardless of size or industry, think, act, and communicate exactly alike. And it is the complete opposite of everyone else. Simon says inspiring leaders start with why, and I think the followers start with what. In the first section of his book, he talks about the world which does not start with why. He describes a swearing-in ceremony of a person as the chief executive of a country. And he exemplifies that most of the time we assume we know, because the description is equally true for Adolf Hitler in 1933 as well as John F. Kennedy after the World War II, if the year of the swearing-in ceremony is missing. This is important because our behavior is affected by our assumptions. We make assumptions about the world around us based on sometimes incomplete or false information. We make decisions based on what we think we know. He asks, do we really know why some organizations succeed and why others do not? Or do we just assume? Simon then goes on to tell us an episode where an American executive went to see a Japanese car assembly line. At the end of the line, the doors were put on the hinges, the same as in America, but one step was missing in Japan. In America, workers would tap the edges of the door with a rubber mallet to ensure that it fits perfectly. But in Japan, they make sure it fits when they design it. And so, they don't need the mallet. There are two ways to influence human behavior: manipulating or inspiring. Inspired people would do it because they want to do it. Manipulation is easy, but most of the time it ends up in some sort of resentment. Simon describes how many companies manipulate the price to entice buyers. He says that for the seller, selling based on price is like heroin. The short-term gain is fantastic, but the more you do it, the harder it gets to kick the habit. Once buyers get used to paying a lower than average price for a product or service, it's very hard to get them to pay more. Fear, real or perceived, is arguably the most powerful manipulation. Peer pressure is often used by sellers to sway the buyer into believing that whatever is being sold is better. He says manipulations don't breed loyalty, although they can drive sales. Over time, they cost more and more, and they increase the stress for both buyer and seller. Manipulations lead to transactions, not loyalty. Just because it works doesn't make it right. In part 2 of his book, he offers an alternative perspective to the traditional approach of doing business. He explains the concept of golden circle in amazing detail. Let me spend some time explaining it to you by deviating away from the mind map. The golden circle is really golden. He draws 3 concentric circles on the board. He labels the innermost circle as why, the middle circle as how, and the outermost circle as what. Most people communicate by starting with the obvious, the what. For example, we make great computers. Then explain how their product or service is better. For example, our computers are beautifully designed, simple to use, and user-friendly. Then they try to convince how different they are from competition. And then expect a purchase action by closing a deal. Simon says this hardly ever inspires action. He contrasts this with what successful companies like Apple do. Apple's message says, everything we do, we believe in challenging the status quo. We believe in thinking differently. This is Apple's why. The way we challenge the status quo is by making our products beautifully designed, simple to use, and user-friendly. This is Apple's how. And we happen to make great computers. Want to buy one? This is Apple's what. Apple simply doesn't reverse the order of information. Their message starts with why, a purpose, cause, or belief that has nothing to do with what they do. What they do, the products that they make, from computers to small electronics, no longer serve as the reason to buy. They serve as the tangible proof of their cause. How they do links the two. Let me come back to the mind map. Simon says that this is based on biology rather than just his opinion. Let me zoom in. If we look at cross-section of our brains from the top, the outermost layer of the brain, neocortex, corresponds with the what level. Neocortex is responsible for all of our rational and analytical thought and language. So we can understand vast amounts of data about what the product or service is about. The middle 2 sections make up our limbic brains. These are responsible for our feelings, but these have no capability for language. The marketing message may or may not be able to address these parts of our brain. When the message fails, the buyer may agree at the what level, but since the message has failed to inspire, the buyer would not feel the need to act and hence respond with, it just doesn't feel right. Simon says that when you directly address why part of the brain, you have greater influence on behavior. The most important question is, if you don't know what you do, why you do, let me repeat that. If you don't know why you do what you do, and people respond to why you do what you do, then how can you get people to do what you want them to do? Let me say that again. If you don't know why you do what you do, and people respond to why you do what you do, then how can you get people to do what you want them to do? When manipulations thrive, uncertainty increases for buyers, instability increases for sellers, and stress increases for all. You have to clearly know why you do what you do. Once you know why you do what you do, the next question is, how will you do it? How we do things manifests in the systems and processes within the organization and culture. The discipline to never veer from your cause, to hold yourself accountable to how you do things, is the hardest part. Everything you say and everything you do has to prove what you believe. Part 3 of his book is titled Leaders Need a Following. In a chapter titled The Emergence of Trust, he gives the example of Continental Airlines. He says the employees were embarrassed to work there and they felt mistreated. If a company mistreats their people, just watch how the employees treat their customers. Mud rolls down a hill and the one standing at the bottom will be hit with the full brunt. In a business, that is usually the customer. So this was a major problem with Continental Airlines. Herb Kelleher, the head of Southwest Airlines, was considered a heretic when he said, first responsibility of a company is to look after the employees. But he increased the customer loyalty to a great extent. Only when individuals feel they are protected by the organization they work for, they will take personal risks in order to advance that culture or organization as a whole. Simon explains how tipping point tips. He gives the example of TiVo. TiVo is a company that seemed to have everything going for them, but they thought what they did mattered more than why they did it. They ignored the law of diffusion of innovation. TiVo attempted to appeal to the cynical majority by explaining what the product did instead of stating why the company or the product existed in the first place. He says, if you have the discipline to focus on the early adopters, the majority will come along eventually. For a company that wants to bring in innovative products, this is the best approach. I have now come to the end of part 1 of this two-part presentation. So far, I have covered up to the first 3 sections of this book, which has 6 sections. You can see the remaining 3 sections in the second part of the presentation. Now that is the full mind map. I hope I have inspired you to strive for what inspires you. You can reach me by email at videobook@wake-technology.com, and you can see this video at wake-technology.com/video video book. Thank you.